Well, this is it, everybody. This is the final video in our series on the book of Revelation. And today we are looking at the most famous and infamous woman in all of Revelation, the woman who sits on the beast, also known as Babylon the Great. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I do theology, Bible study, and apologetics. So, if this kind of stuff interests you, consider subscribing. We've been doing this series for quite some time now, and if you missed any of them, just go to the playlist and check them out. Let's dive right into this. So, let's begin by talking about who this woman is. She is called the harlot on the beast, or in other translations, the prostitute on the beast. The literal rendering of the original language would actually be something like woman, harlot, but that doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. So, we usually translate it as woman. That's what we're going to do for the rest of this video. Now, some people have tried to argue that this isn't actually a woman, that it's a metaphor for something else. But the vast majority of scholars throughout history have understood this to be a woman. She's clearly described as such. In fact, there's even mention of her having breasts. So yeah, it's definitely a woman. So, what does the Bible say about her? Well, we meet her in Revelation 17, which starts by saying, "Then one of the angels that showed me said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute is sitting are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages." So right away, John tells us that this woman is somehow connected to these four things: peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. He then goes on to describe the woman herself, saying, "And the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, richly ornamented with gold. She was holding a golden cup in her hand, and on it were all kinds of abominations, and the filth of her immorality. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and will come up out of the abyss. It will go to its grave, but afterwards it will rise again. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. Now John goes on to explain how the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her and how they followed her into his great harlotry. And he further describes the woman as being full of names of blasphemy. Now John says, "The woman you saw is great." No, she's more than great. She's Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. He goes on to tell us that merchants of the earth became rich from her luxurious lifestyle. And he finishes that section by telling us how the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her and how they followed her into his great harlotry. Then the angel said to me, "Why did you prostitute yourself with her?" As the prophet was being shown all of this, I asked him to clarify this mystery. "Come here," he said. "I will show you." And he carried me away in the spirit to a desert. And there I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast was covered with blasphemous names. And the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, richly ornamented with gold. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominations and the filth of her immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of blasphemy. Now, you may be wondering why we get this kind of graphic description of the woman. Why does John need to go into such detail? And the reason he gives us in verse 18, where he says, "The answer to the riddle, the woman you saw is great." No, she's more than great. She's Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. So John basically says, "Hey, don't worry, I'll explain it to you." Verse 18 is the explanation of verses 1 through 17. Okay, so the woman you saw is the great city, Babylon. All right, so the next question is, who is Babylon? Who is this great city? And to understand that, we need to look at the Old Testament. because the word Babylon in this passage obviously is referring to ancient Babylon, the capital of the Babylonian Empire. But the name Babylon actually means the gate of God. And it was originally a small town east of Eden, which grew into a huge city that became the capital of a mighty empire that rose to power after the fall of the Assyrian Empire around 912 BC. And this empire stretched from the Mediterranean Sea in the west to western Iran in the east, and from the Caucasus Mountains in the north all the way to the Arabian Peninsula in the south. And Babylon was the capital of this empire. And when we read history books on Babylon, we find that they were everything that John describes. They were wicked, they were violent, they were sexually immoral, and they hated God. I mean, in one instance, they even burned one of their kings alive inside a bronze statue of himself. They were insane. But above all, they were arrogant. They thought they were better than everyone else, that they were smarter, that they were more cultured, that they were at the top of the food chain. And the Bible tells us that they rebelled against God to the point that God had to destroy the entire city. Now, obviously, we can see Babylon rising again in Revelation. John shows us the future version of Babylon, which comes in the form of a woman who sits on a beast. And this woman is Babylon, the great mother of prostitution, as John calls her, because she's a city that will seduce the world into sin and idolatry. And once again, she will take things too far and God will have to destroy her. And that's why John calls her Babylon the Great. So, who is the beast she's sitting on? Well, let's look at that. So, we've already done a video on the beast of the sea. You should watch that if you haven't. But we'll summarize it here for you. The beast of the sea is an image of the world powers that oppose God. And in the book of Daniel, we're told that this beast represents kings. And that makes sense if you read the first part of Revelation, because in chapter 13, we read that two beasts come up out of the sea. One is described as being like a leopard with 4 horns. And that sounds like it's describing the Roman Empire. And then the second beast comes in, which is described as having 2 horns like a lamb. But it speaks like a dragon, which sounds like it's describing the papacy. So John is probably using the beast as an image of the world powers that are currently persecuting Christians. And the Pope was a major player in that during John's day, hence why he gets his own little subsection. But there's another beast. There's the beast of the land, which is described in Revelation 13 as coming out of the ground, and having 2 horns like a lamb and speaking like a dragon. And the Bible tells us that it performs great signs, even fire coming down from heaven, and it will deceive those who live on earth. And that sounds pretty creepy. Like, what kind of tricks could it possibly do that would convince people that it's a lamb? Well, according to scholars, it can change its appearance and color. Okay, all right. So what does this woman have to do with the beast? What's the significance of her sitting on it? Well, remember, the Bible tells us that this woman is Babylon. So, in essence, we can say that Babylon is sitting on the world powers. Or you can think of it the other way around. The world powers are sitting under Babylon. Either way, the meaning is clear. Babylon controls the world. It's over. We lost. We might as well kiss our freedoms goodbye because Babylon has taken control. But wait, John tells us that this Babylon, this world system, will ultimately be destroyed. In fact, he says it twice in this chapter alone. So if Babylon destroys us, why does it matter if we follow Jesus? We're all gonna be wiped out anyway. So what's the big deal? Well, the answer to that question lies in the response that the Bible gives to this woman. After John finishes describing her and her immorality, he immediately tells us that God has judged her. Look at Revelation 17:16, where it says, "Then the angel said to me, The waters you saw where the prostitute is sitting are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. And the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but have been given power for 1 hour, like the beast. They will make war against the woman, against the prostitute, and the woman will be given over to them, and they will treat her abominations and loathe her filthiness. For here is the home of the prostitute, and the place where the earth has abominated. So they will hate her and will bring her into desolate and naked, and they will eat her flesh. So even though Babylon rises again and seems to defeat God's people, God still judges her. In fact, John tells us that there's going to be a cosmic earthquake, both physically and spiritually, that will shake the very foundations of the world. And this event will lead to the destruction of Babylon and usher in the rule of God as kingdom. So no matter how powerful she looks, no matter how much damage she does, God will judge her. And that's why we shouldn't fear her. That's why we shouldn't submit to her. That's why we shouldn't compromise with her. And that's why we shouldn't compromise with the world. Because no matter how powerful she looks, no matter how much damage she does, God will judge her. And that's the message of Revelation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you understand this really weird and crazy passage a little bit better. And if you want to continue your study of the book of Revelation, you can go to the playlist and watch the other videos we've done on this book. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share it with others. Until next time, everybody take care.